In the northwest portion of I Corps, the Marine Corps' area of responsibility in the Republic of Vietnam, are two valleys. They form a natural avenue of approach for the infiltration of North Vietnamese troops and war materials from the sanctuary of Laos to the South Vietnamese cities of Hue and Da Nang. These valleys are the A Shau and the De Krong. The mountains surrounding the valleys are rugged, with only Route 548 passing from Laos on the west, south through the valleys. During the monsoon season, the valleys are all but cut off from the rest of I Corps by the low cloud layer. It is under this cloud cover that the North Vietnamese Army built up supplies and launched their Tet Offensive of 1968 against the city of Hue. In January 1969, aerial photography in and around the valleys indicated the enemy was once again building up supplies in this area. 3rd Marine Division recon teams operating deep in enemy territory confirmed this information. Route 548 was being heavily traveled. Fortifications and communication facilities had been constructed. The infiltration and massive buildup would have to be stopped. Thus, an operation was born, codename Dewey Canyon. Even while the complex planning for the operation was underway, Marine attack and fighter aircraft began their work pounding the NVA positions and disrupting his flow of supplies. Less than 24 hours after the decision was made to commence Dewey Canyon, all elements of the Marine Air-Ground Team were ready to launch one of the most difficult and exacting helicopter assault efforts of all time. With supply lines stretching over 50 kilometers of rugged jungle-covered mountains. Artillery fire support bases would be seized through standard helicopter assault. Each fire support base to be taken under the covering artillery fire of one previously in place. Early D-Day morning, flights of Marine aircraft paved the way for the helicopter assaults into the landing zones named Razor and Riley, located on either side of the De Krong Valley. Battle-hardened Marine infantry boarded, and the Sea Knights lifted off from Van de Grift Combat Base. A team of professionals, air and ground, was on the way. Under the protection of Marine gunships and fixed-wing aircraft, the first transports touched down almost simultaneously on Razor and Riley. The Marines encountered no enemy resistance. In the rapid buildup that followed, the Marine CH-46s brought 1,544 Marines and 46 tons of cargo into the two landing zones. By the end of the day, both zones were secured. Work had already started that would turn the easternmost landing zone into the first new fire support base in the Dewey Canyon objective area, Fire Support Base Razor. In just a few hours, the Marine Air-Ground Team had projected our fighting power into an area which the enemy had always considered firmly in his grip. By the end of the second day of the operation, artillery and the command post of the 9th Marines were in place on Fire Support Base Razor. The way was paved for the next aerial leap forward. The following day, 3 companies of the 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines, were helilifted onto the ridgeline known as Ko Ka to establish Fire Support Base Cunningham, the focal position of Operation Dewey Canyon. With the operation only 72 hours old, Cunningham's guns began firing. Because adequate flying weather was at a premium, resupply was augmented by Army helicopters. Over the next 3 days, additional artillery and tons of supplies poured out of the skies and into Cunningham and Razor. It was a race against the weather, trying to amass the critically needed supplies before flying conditions became hazardous in the mountains. Patrols from Razor and Cunningham had little trouble finding the North Vietnamese troops. However, contact was light for the most part, and successfully countered by Marine firepower. As this central area was being secured, other companies of the 9th Marines pushed south down the ridgeline from Riley to establish landing zone Dallas, guarding Dewey Canyon's western flank. Further west and south, teams of the 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion were searching out the enemy's base areas and adding to the 9th Marine security. January 29 brought the Army of the Republic of Vietnam into Dewey Canyon, as 2 companies of the 1st Battalion, 2nd Regiment, 1st ARVN Division were helilifted into Fire Support Base Tornado before the weather closed in. Their mission? Establish Fire Support Base Lightning further south and secure the eastern flank of the operation, cutting off enemy escape in that direction. As the ARVN troops moved into Tornado, the monsoon season began to make itself felt. Low clouds and drizzles covered the mountain tops and obscured visibility. For the next 9 days, this weather turned back most attempts to fly into the Dewey Canyon area. During the few clear moments, helicopters quickly took to the air, flying in troops, ammunition, rations, and water, flying out with wounded, always fighting the weather, looking for holes in the overcast, fulfilling their mission any way, any time they could. During these 9 days, supplies were dropped by parachute into Marine and ARVN positions by aircraft flying on instruments under control of Van de Graaff radar. While aerial observation was difficult, Marine aircraft continued radar-guided bomb runs, striking heavy blows against the enemy tunnel and bunker complexes constructed by the North Vietnamese. The 9th Marines not only held during this rainy period, they advanced. On 4 February, a company of the 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines, moved into and occupied what was to be the last fire support base for the final push to Route 548, Fire Base Erskine. But the North Vietnamese were running out of luck and weather. On 9 February, the cloud cover broke sufficiently to allow both Marine helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft to return in force to Dewey Canyon. Resupply helicopters carrying food, water, ammunition, and fresh troops swept into the area. Medevacs were lifted to the rear. At the same time, Marine air was hard at work in the areas to the south. There, the enemy had been taking advantage of the bad weather by preparing his positions. Now, the planes, along with artillery, set about destroying his work. On 11 February, artillery from Fire Support Base Razor was moved forward to Fire Support Base Erskine. Razor was closed. The stage was set for Dewey Canyon to be transformed from an aggressive operation into one of the biggest successes of the war through a feat of Marine air-ground teamwork virtually unmatched in Vietnam. The 9th Marines, with battalions on line, moved from Cunningham and Erskine into the Quang Valley to the south. Ahead loomed their objective, Tiger Mountain. Gain Tiger Mountain and Route 548 would cease to exist as an enemy supply line, and the threat to I Corps would be neutralized. Contact with the enemy was almost immediate. The 9 days of bad weather had provided him time to organize his defense. The Marines ground out advances slowly against a well-dug-in enemy who hit our points with all his firepower, then attempted to move back to new positions before being overrun by the Marines. Courage, guts, and ingenuity were the hallmark of Dewey Canyon. Artillery from Erskine and Cunningham was constantly on call and delivered devastating results under control of Marine forward observers. Each morning, at first light, observation aircraft went aloft to seek out the enemy. Throughout the day, these aircraft were on station, observing enemy movement and controlling artillery and airstrikes. They also passed weather reports back to Quang Tri, where Marine helicopter missions into the area could be launched in support of the steadily advancing units. Starting on 19 February, the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, were helilifted into Cunningham and Erskine, fresh and ready to fight. Early in the afternoon of 22nd February, A Company of the 9th Marines, on a ridgeline west of Tiger Mountain, made solid contact with North Vietnamese troops in a bunker complex. The enemy fought hard, but the combination of A Company and supporting arms were too much, and the position fell. A second enemy position some 200 meters away was discovered and engaged by the Marines, and it too fell before the Marines' firepower. A complex of 100 fortified bunkers was overrun. A single Marine company with supporting arms had attacked and defeated a well-dug-in and fortified North Vietnamese battalion. That same day, Marines of the 3rd Battalion gained the crest of the symbolic objective of the whole operation, Tiger Mountain, the northern terminus of the A Shau Valley. Tiger Mountain, for years a communist resupply and headquarters area, would soon take on new character under a new name, Fire Support Base Turnage. February. The 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, would climax its attack southward by taking the enemy headquarters complex at Tam Boy in a thundering advance so violent that the enemy could only destroy his weapons and flee, leaving a wealth of supplies and weaponry behind. 24 February also ended with 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines firmly in control of the ridgeline overlooking Route 548, where it passed from Vietnam into Laos. This road was now closed to the enemy. On 27 February, Delta Company, 9th Marines, moving down Route 548, engaged an enemy force with small arms and machine gun fire. The communists broke and fled into the surrounding jungle, leaving 30 dead behind them in the midst of one of the largest munitions caches yet captured in the war. $288 tons of ordnance, which had been laboriously transported from North Vietnam and carefully stored, only to be captured in its entirety by the 9th Marines. The following days continued to yield great quantities of captured and destroyed enemy weapons, equipment, and stores. North Vietnamese troops, in final frantic efforts to salvage something out of their demolished sanctuary, launched desperate attacks against the Marines. But nothing was to be saved as North Vietnamese losses continued to mount in the final days of Dewey Canyon. The overwhelming successes of the 9th Marines in Dewey Canyon are pointed out by the capture of large quantities of crew-served weapons, including 12 122mm guns with a range of 13 miles, 4 smaller 85mm artillery pieces, and 25 60mm and 82mm mortars, 24 57mm recoilless rifles, and more than 65 assorted anti-aircraft guns. Enemy ammunition loss to the Marines was awesome in quantity. 7,287 122mm artillery rounds, 966 rocket rounds, over 60,000 mortar rounds, 50,000 hand grenades, 120,000 rounds of anti-aircraft ammunition, over 500,000 rounds of small arms ammunition, to name some. The enemy base hospital captured by the Marines was a major installation complete with operating rooms. Included in this capture were over 500 pounds of medical supplies. Most significant in the accomplishments of Dewey Canyon were the classic fire and maneuver of the regiment in the attack, with Marine rifle companies supported by Marine air and artillery fires, overrunning the enemy to seize and clear landing zones ahead of the helicopter movement. On March 18th, Operation Dewey Canyon ended. Planning together, fighting together, the Marine Corps Air-Ground Team had successfully projected its fighting power deep into an enemy stronghold and destroyed it. The courage and aggressiveness of the Marine infantrymen, helicopter crews and pilots, the crushing power of our artillery, and the accuracy and firepower of Marine air prove beyond any question the Marine Air-Ground Team's ability to defeat any enemy, anywhere, at any time. In the words of Lieutenant General Richard G. Stilwell, Commanding General of the U.S. Army's 24th Corps in Vietnam, Dewey Canyon deserves some space in American military history by sole reason of audacity, guts, and magnificent inter-service team play. A Marine regiment of extraordinary cohesion, skill in mountain warfare, and plain heart made Dewey Canyon a resounding success. As an independent regimental operation, projected 50 kilometers airline from the nearest base and sustained in combat for 7 weeks, it may be unparalleled. Without question, the 9th Marines' performance represents the very essence of professionalism.